Hey. Mini music is actually kind of chill. I like it. It's that piano. Hey. I like it. Okay, there we go. I look good on YouTube. I look good on Twitch. Everything is Gucci Gucci. Let me never say that ever again. Hello, people. Seku-Senpai here. We're back for some more Witch on the Holy Night. We'll continue from our left off, starting with Chapter 5. I'm surprised at the progress I'm making with this. Surprisingly. Night of the Witches, Part 1. So, I'm probably going to do Part 1. I'd probably do Part 2 the following stream. Which would be Thursday. I'll see. I mean, I honestly, I don't know how long this part's going to be. I actually have some water with me today, so I have no sore throat when I'm done. But last part, we confirmed that Sojiro was the one who witnessed Alice as well as Aoko doing their magic. So, yeah, that happened. I figured it was going to be him, but I'm just curious to see what's going to happen, because I'm pretty sure they don't want to kill off the dude to host Sojiro. That'd be kind of messed up if they kill him off in the beginning. So, yeah, anyways, I'm looking forward to see what happens today. Let's do this next episode. Knights of the Witches. Oh man, we're gonna see the use of Mahō. Sojiro returned to his apartment, on foot as per routine, under a blanket of clouds in the night sky. The rusty stairs of his apartment building clanked with each step. Oh, my bad. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see the bicycle parked by the apartment building's outer wall. He debated the pros and cons of a bicycle, how much easier life would be versus the expense, the convenience versus the necessity, but in the end, decided one was not right for just him now. Clutching the bag of apples under his arm, he took the key of his took out the key to his residence. It's not like he tilted his head in confusion. More and more he found himself preoccupied with such random thoughts. Then the real issue at hand was deciding about what to do with the apples he had received. You got a present of apples? Is it from the other girl? He placed the paper bag by the sink and switched on the lights. Oh, it's my jacket. That's like... It was just after 10 in the evening. With the end of term exams just around the corner, he had come home an hour earlier than usual. As he made back for the kitchen to pick one of the apples to snack on, he found an envelope stuffed in his mail slot. Stuffed. Okay. The envelope had no name, return address, or stamp. Ooh, anonymous? Inside was a single piece of paper that had only the sender's name and a short message. It read, oh boy. A concise set of orders, neatly written. It was signed Aoko Aozaki. She had been considerate enough to enclose the detailed map of the meeting place. Puzzled, he cocked his head to the side, then headed out the door. What would y'all do? You get a mail from a classmate of yours saying to meet me at this place at night. Now, if I'm in the city, and it's not like my town where you have to drive to get around, I wouldn't go anyways. What the heck? Afterward, upon the room's sole tenant leaving the premises, the envelope burst into flames and evaporated without a trace, as though it had never existed in the first place. That's actually kind of cool. That's like some Mission Impossible stuff. By the late 80s, Japan's post-war economic boom had somewhat stabilized, and the city experienced a period of steady growth. The city's modernization marched on when the Japan Railways train station, a symbol of the new era, neared completion. Japan Railways, they ain't lying. It's really good. In Misaki's neighboring town of Yashirogi, a new symbol of its own was about to be born. Dang! Yashirogi bred in Kitsi land. It was Misaki's worst investment. Years later, it would be dubbed the fool's gold of the economic bubble, a relic of bygone age. 10 years ago, Yashirogi's renowned Tokitsu baking company ran factories all across the nation. Its proprietor was a middle-aged gentleman, then age 56, by the name of Yurihiko Tokitsu, known affectionately by most as Topan. He took it upon himself to begin development on an estate on the outskirts of Yashirogi, and broke ground on a recreational wonderland that he hoped to be the pride of Misaki City. Oh, so it's talking about that amusement park that got shut down. Okay. The long-awaited opening came in 1981. After 3 years of investment, this local amusement park, full of all kinds of hopes and dreams, began its short-lived tenure. It covered more than 85 square acres. Its magnificent merry-go-round dazzled all those who passed through the park's gates. Its roller coaster twisted and turned about the edges of the park like a writhing Japanese dragon. Its Ferris wheel, packed beyond necessity with gimmicks, was said to have tested the limits of modern engineering. Is that so? Old Yurihiko looked upon his creation and smiled. Only boosting his confidence was the fact that its grand opening was staged during the period of prosperity, the springtime of the world. But, in spite of this, they splendidly miscalculated the balance between aspirations and sophistication. It was overly ambitious. Its mascot, Kitsi, was poorly designed and appeared like a cheap knockoff. Okay, so he's not a bad mascot. The park was stuffed to the brim with bread stands. Even its impossible-to-navigate mirror maze seemed out of date from the start. There are no dreams to be had at Kitsyland, only nightmarish satire. Dang. Numerous trade magazines lambasted Kitsyland's shortcoming, and customer attendance declined. There was even an incident where a 6-year-old strayed from his mother, had an accident, and nearly died. Dang. 1986, 5 years after the park opened. The situation had grown from bad to worse, and the park was hemorrhaging money, whatever. And top of everything, Yurihiko, who had bet everything on the success of mascot Kitsi, retired, and Kitsyland's operations were officially in trouble. And thus, amidst the scorn of nearly all residents of the area, ended Misaki City's one and only amusement park. What's more, perhaps best described as a footnote to this debacle, the self-proclaimed Parisian artist who designed the mascot, Toki Julich, was said to have snapped his brush in mourning over the closure of the park. That reminds me of this place that was in my town. We had this arcade. They shut that down, man. They're bringing something else back in the mall, though. The mall that was boring as heck, but returning to the present, is now used as a place where magicians and mages fight. It was an execution spot, more like for witnesses. It was midnight, and Kitsyland of today was a shadow of its former glory. Like a doll abandoned in the corner of a toy box, the lonely park was illuminated only by the light of the town that continued to live around it. Listen to me. Sojiro closed the Yashirogi guidebook that he had picked up on the way here. Listen to me. The story of its history was almost difficult to believe, but he supposed this was what people refer to as entropy. The park's front gate was unlocked. When he worked here the previous time, the iron fence was locked shut with a rusty chain, but the chain was nowhere to be seen and the gate left ajar. Following the map drawn in the letter, Sojiro quickly made his way inside. This sounds quite suspicious, Sojiro. I'm surprised you even went out here. You can catch me doing this crap. I don't care who it is. Sojiro complained, quite out of character for him. He's uneasy. He senses something's off, or he's not getting a good vibe. It was probably because, in spite of his naivety, even he knew that something was amiss. Exactly! Though the park was abandoned, this was still trespassing. Unlawful entry, larceny, burglary. These were certainly not things or perhaps crimes that Sojiro was proud to do. But money. The real reason his conscience was gnawing at him. He clapped his hands in apology toward the statue of Kitsi, whose eyes the paint had begun to aptly dissolve. Sojiro passed the mascot bleeding red paint from its eye socket and began to walk the night park. I'm about to say the night sky. I was like, hold up. The building's color had faded. The collection of machines was rusty. The man-made residents no longer felt the passage of time. Even the ghosts themselves could not endure the disparity between this forsaken place and its previous grand stature. It was like a fossilized dream. These were the ruins of a paradise both created and abandoned by man and reality. The economy had stabilized, and the standard of living was on the rise. No one was overly concerned with the future. These were the remains of a wild and exciting era. His breath turning to white, wisps before him. Sojiro continued through the abandoned amusement park. Though void of human presence, this was not nearly as frightening as the darkness deep in the mountains. City suburbs can take many different forms, but Kitsyland was unusual for an amusement park so much as it had been built adjacent to a residential district. The park was surrounded by a forest, but even that ultimately was man-made. It was no different from the curtains on a classroom window, just decoration. Ugly decoration? If he were to scale the iron fence encircling Kitsyland and break through the 20-yard of forested trees, he could make it back to the familiar townscape. Though the amusement park tended to arouse dread in the city folk, to Sojiro it was a little different from the commotion and terror of downtown. The central plaza was as silent as a grave. According to the map, the meeting spot was west of here. Waiting for Sojiro at his destination was rugged, imposing, magnificent castle towering before the backdrop of the cloudy night sky. Even for an abandoned park, it was a remarkable structure. If the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel were loud, intense attractions, this was in comparison quite an easygoing. Yo, what up, Pedro? Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. It was one of Kitsyland's 3 iconic structures, and, in a way, the wicked fortress that guided the paradise down the path of closure. This would be basically like what Disneyland would be like if it didn't profit well, which would be kind of weird. But, generally speaking, the amusement park mazes generally fell into one of 2 categories. A labyrinth, which disorients its visitors with its sheer size, and a house of mirrors, which disorients visitors with optical illusions. Many of the labyrinth's guests enjoyed the brief sense of adventure that it afforded. Over the years, however, it would be usurped by the ever-increasing thrills of new attractions, such is the way of all trends, the curse of fades. The new must give way to the newer. On the other hand, the House of Mirrors was a time-honored, beloved staple. Even within the confines of a classroom's dimension, well-placed mirrors and well-directed light could both perplex and delight its visitors. And figuring in the cost of maintenance, a well-designed House of Mirrors could far outlive its labyrinth brethren. Even if both types faded into obscurity, they would remain a staple of what constituted an amusement park. However, that didn't mean that combining them would produce double the fun. Together, they transformed from entertainment into an uncanny realm from which those who dared to step within could never leave. In a similar sense, Kitsy's Mystery Tour Castle was the park's very own other world. Indeed, 5% of visitors ended up requesting staff assistance to get out. Modeled after European castles, it was greater than a football field in length, and the interior was further split into 3 floors. 2 floors above ground and 1 below, lined with mirrors from top to bottom, equal parks complex and vast. The maze demanded at least 30 minutes even from veterans. Man. One visit was all it took to be struck by catastrophophobia for hours. It was this labyrinth that now stood in Sojiro's way. You're gonna go in there, man? It seemed that Sojiro, unaware of what a house of mirrors even was, concerned himself only with its lighting. You won't catch me ever going to one of those things, man. He checked the letter from Aoko once more. The letter read, "I'll be waiting in the 4th floor lobby of the House of Mirrors." That meeting place was definitely in here. There was something to see by at least, as he could make out light faintly through the open doors. Putting aside his suspicions, he headed toward the entrance. The sound of his footsteps against the brick-laid path echoed faintly. He was far from the hustle and bustle of the city. The park's clocks no longer made tick nor talk. And the winter's bite no longer blew in the night. From within the silence, the stillness that would cause any onlooker to hold their breath. Konnichiwa? He said it. Never mind. Sojiro stopped abruptly in the entrance to the House of Mirrors. He called out, turning back toward the plaza. Was she hiding? A sound rang as if someone had dove behind a garbage can and fell to the ground in their haste. A short silence ensued. For a moment, the abandoned park returned to its previous hush. Resigned to having been her being exposed, the girl appeared from her hiding place. Yo, what was she doing?
Oh.
You got comfy wear. His voice died in his throat as he took in the sight of a girl's familiar face in unfamiliar attire. This Aoko, with her long hair flowing in the breeze, was different from the Aoko that Sojiro knew. That's true, he's never seen her outside of her school uniform, so he's like, oh. Sojiro struck in awe. The resolute stance and posture she took exuded the strength of her will. She stared directly at him with a sharp-eyed, piercing gaze. Her eyes were glowing with a dim, phosphoric light, enough to give Sojiro pause that he might be hallucinating. The icy coldness in a girl's strength. Sojiro lacked a sense of danger, but the sense of imbalance caused him to feel the malice in the air. It was as though the Yuki Onna spirit of folklore had climbed out from the ghost story and appeared here in reality.
Ozaki.
Instinctively, Sojiro took a step back. Oh snap! Surprised, he was starting to feel concerned. An unpleasant premonition rose to the surface, bringing with a sense of anxiety. In spite of this, he felt obliged to honor urban etiquette by seeing if she was alright. Oh man, Sojiro. I really hope he doesn't. I don't think he's gonna die, but I'm nervous. I don't know what's gonna happen next. Without acknowledging him, Aoko took a step forward. Her figure, this atmosphere, Sojiro found himself recalling a recent memory. His twisted and knotted apprehension melted away and was replaced with a glowing realization. He's like, oh snap, that girl from that night. The girl before him was very similar to someone he had seen before, that night in the park, though he had only seen her from behind. So this night, oh man. With increasing certainty causing him to swallow nervously, he noted that they might as well have been identical. That's She does like being straightforward with it. Aoka said, perturbed by the swift change in plans. Sojiro was mightily relieved that he had got the wrong place. It was unclear whether he felt confident about dealing with what was to come, or if he had simply failed to grasp the hopelessness of the situation. Ako ignored his obtuse response and continued.
私はね、しずきくん。嫌いな人とか、
She's taking another
憎
step
い人と
forward.
かは人並みにいるんだ。ただ、ちょっと変なのが敵になるやつの条件でね。
Huh. Cold emotion burned in her eyes. Her feet had already moved one step closer to Sojiro. And Sojiro, you need to take another step back, bro. Sojiro sensed the foreboding and growing stronger. Wondering if what he sensed was bloodless, he retreated another step. Smart. Continuing as so, they maintained a distance of just 15 feet.
昔から、私は嫌いな相手でも敵と思ったことはなかったの。でも逆に、好きな相手を敵だと思うこともあった。理由は単純。
Oh, she's holding her hand out. She held out her right arm. The light outside her was no illusion.
当たり前のことだけど、
Burning blue.
私の感情を乱すやつが敵なのよ。
Oh, her arm moved again. It was instantaneous. Something shot past Sojiro in a blink of an eye, missing him by just a foot of his left. Before his eyes, blue light, something akin to a fireball, had ignited from nothing. He finally understood what was happening.
ちょっと待った。今のは大変見覚えがある。
She ignored his dim-witted reaction.
外したか。
Yeah, you missed, man. He wasn't that far, but I mean, she's still somewhat new with magic, somewhat like a little. Okay. Anyways, Ako muttered to herself. The first, or maybe she didn't want to kill him. You know, maybe some. Okay, let's see. The fist-sized hole in the blue light had made in the house was of mirrors crackled and smoldered. A shot like that could easily cave in a human skull, in addition to burning it to a crisp.
こんな射程で外すなんて、アリスに見られたら自殺もね。
Alo's probably watching this.
でも、これで分かったでしょ。二度目だものね。
Oh man. Sojiro backed away swiftly. Things were beyond incomprehension. He was close to losing the ability to think at all. All he could make out was the figure of the independable student council president, or at least that's what he thought was the president, and the memories of the park that night 2 days ago. He had never experienced anything like this, though most people living in the civilized country would have never ever seen anything like it either. A lethal weapon that could kill with nothing more than the pull of a finger had a way of suspending the ability of his target to determine between not just good and evil, but dreams and reality, past and future. And the more peaceful someone's life had been, the stronger that suspense was likely to be. All that one could think about was the fact that they were alive at that very moment. It was as if he was an unwritten character on a blank piece of white paper. There was no before, there was no after. There's only what came next. This is a very common thought process for anyone staring down the barrel of a gun.
命乞いはやめてね。意味ない。
She said, yo, you begging is not going to help.
恨み事ならご自由に。殺す側の義務として一言一句聞いてあげる。
Dang. And she says it's just so like blankly. By saying it was pointless, she made it sound more like she would not listen to what he had to say. However, Sojiro was in such a state of shock that it did not even enter his mind to speak up. Ooh. All he knew, for reasons unknown, was that the girl in front of him wanted him dead.
嘘つきにも程がある。飛び丸のバカ。何がそんな生き物はいないだ。実際いるじゃないか、こんなお化けみたいなのが。
Sojiro felt that if he had said that out loud, the second blast would come even quicker than the last, so he kept it to himself. He's not wrong. His mental expletives stirred his mind from paralysis to mere panic. This response came not from confidence, however. Someday out of the blue, someone is going to kill me. While it may have seemed like a baseless belief to hold,
そうだった。 都会には殺人事件がある。ルールを破れば殺されるのは当たり前だってちゃんと教えてもらってた。
To Sojiro, the situation seemed to perfectly align with his inexperienced understanding that the city was a coldly pragmatic place. As far as he was concerned in this moment, being killed by a classmate was not something to be surprised by. He said, yo, this is like an anime or something. Like, in a society where murder was possible, he was able to accept this sort of situation as natural. Of virtually no concern was the series of events that led to Aoko's aggression towards him. The only thing that truly confused him was Aoko's blue fireball. Sojiro swallowed with an audible gulp. To anyone who may have been watching, it was the response of a victim paralyzed by fear.
そういうことよ。ようやく理解してくれたわね。
He's like, yo, I'm gonna die maybe.
多くは語らないけど、あなたにはここで死んでもらう。
Man.
魔術を隠匿するものなんて言ってもそっちには関係のないことだし単に運がなかったって思う
Yeah, that's the thing. That sucks. Wrong place, wrong time.
私があなたを殺したってことだけだから
Done talking, Aoko once again lifted her right arm. There was a hum like a machine. Blue light began to revolve around her arm beneath her sleeve. This was taking longer than last time. Lee and Sojiro believed that it was going to be much stronger than an attack that was still scorching the wall behind him. The realization caused him to panic, his panic to heighten.
いやなんだつまり始末するとかしないとかあの夜のお化けは青崎だったとか都会は本当に込み入ってるとかそういうことじゃなくて
His thoughts became jumbled. His heart pounded like a hammer. This was no time to be standing still. He was not sure if the girl in front of him was really human. And more importantly, even if he could accept the events unfolding before him when all was said and done.
待て人殺しはいけないんだぞ
Hey, okay, Sojiro, you gonna say something? Even if it was a fact of life in the city, Sojiro was not about to lie down and die. Okay, talk your stuff, man. Took her by surprise for a second. She said, okay. Uncle said, yeah, you know what, you're right, but... Sojiro's scream, still entirely oblivious, was just the thing to invoke Aoko's full wrath. She's like, you think I'm stupid? Ooh! Yeah, run, man! Aoko fired a barrage of blue magical bullets. In an instant, Sojiro dashed into the shadows behind him, into the entrance of the House of Mirrors. Oh no. Bro is zooming.
なんだい今のなんだ
He darted feverishly down the hall. After a mere few feet, he was left completely out of breath. This was due to the shock at seeing yet another attack, fiercer than the first, that he had never seen in his life, and because he couldn't shake the thought that if he had moved even a second later, he would be dead. He could not afford to stop. The sound of merciless footsteps closed in behind him.
助かったここならなんとか
Maybe a counterattack, or maybe it's just good to run. He threw everything into his legs as he sprinted. A straight, narrow passage down about 60 feet long connected the entrance to the main lobby. At this rate, if he could just make it to the lobby, he was sure he would be able to find as many hiding spots as he needed.
助かった
He arrived in a large open space. This was the first floor lobby. There were 3 passageways. One led to the basement floor, one connected to the first floor maze, and the other was a set of stairs leading to the second floor. Sojiro did not particularly care which one he chose, so, trusting his intuition, he made a run for the first floor maze. When... a barrier! I assume. He smacked his head into a transparent wall. No, a mirror!
鏡
Okay.
ええ面倒だけどそれならフェアでしょ追いかける方にも逃げる方にも有利不利がある
That's fair. A somehow cheerful voice echoed in his direction. Ooh, yo, the way they be showing this, I like it. There was no need for Sojiro to even turn around. In this very same mirror he had crashed into, he could see Aoko Azaki's figure slowly approaching.
それと1階の奥にある出口は封鎖しといたから結界じゃなくて 物理的に。
Oh, physically, okay. She said, I'm making this fair.
やりすぎて封鎖っていうより瓦礫？土砂崩れ？どっちでもいっか。とにかく下手に出口に近づくと崩落に巻き込まれるから。生き埋めが嫌なら近寄らないことね。
Panicked by the impending footsteps, Sojiro groped for the wall. He could see the stairs to the second floor. He did not understand what Aoko had meant earlier, but he had at least knew that the first floor was not going to save him.
ま、私としてはそっちのが助かるけど、形式上、事故死の方が後始末とか楽だから。
Yeah, she says with a smile on her face. Behind him was a creature beyond words. As she continued her idle taunting, she lifted her right arm ostentatiously. Even from her clothes, he could see some kind of strange, incongruous pattern upon her body. Magic circuits? The veins beneath her skin. They made it seem as though something inhuman was circulating her body. Whether out of pity or repulsion, Sojiro stopped for just a moment. The pursuer evaded his gaze.
ああ、これ？普段は塗り薬で隠しているんだけど、今日は特別。
Oh.
魔術刻印って言ってね。
A magical
魔術師の
crest.
証みたいなものよ。
Okay, so that's the
ほら、
word. Okay,
光が回
crest.
ってるでしょ？これがさっきのスナップ。わかりやすく言うと弾丸の元。
I like how she's explaining it all to him.
今日は調子いいし、私魔力を効率よく使うのだけは自信あるし。うん。あと30回ぐらいかな。さっきみたいな奏者ができるのは。
Oh, Sojiro said, okay, I'm gonna be counting. Perhaps she was in an emotional high, for her voice had become frightfully friendly. The substance of the conversation could not have been any more unsettling. However,
そもそも何を言っているかよくわからないんだけど青崎
わからない？段数はあと30発ってこと。そこまで逃げ切ればあなたの勝ちよ。とりあえず
for today, oh boy.
今日はって明日もあるのかな
Sojiro and his bros, he's like, dang, he's like, you're really making me work, huh? Work to live. I mean, why not? Aoko's expression increased to a scowl at his behavior. Although he was panicking, it seemed that deep down he still did not feel the full weight of the crisis. She knew he still didn't get it.
宣言はしたわ。自由時間はこれでおしまい。まだ罵り足りないだろうけど、ま、その手の時間はキリがないしね。この辺りで諦めて。
It appeared Aoko had prepared the theatrical dialogue ahead of time. Not to allow her opponent time for futile pleading, but to give him the time to curse her, his killer. Such forthrightness was her modus operandi. With his victim, however, it was not going as she had hoped.
とにかくそういうことだから。じゃ、狩りの時間と行きましょう
Oh,
か。
my bad. Her voice was void of emotion, and her eyes ruthless as they bored into her prey. This time, Sojiro finally accepted that he was going to die. Oh, cutting back to what's happening outside of this? Silent as the dead, it stepped into the remnants of the dream that had long since seen no visitors. There was no wind this night, nor a soul to be seen. Still, it heard the echoes from within, clasped its hands together, and grinned. Its form with hands clasped, resembled that of a building tulip. The bearing of this artificial tower reflected in the cloudy mirror of the ticket attendant's office next to the gate. Next to it stood a display board, corroded by years upon years of rust. Who's this? Number of visitors today, 2. Number of today, blank. The board had graffiti crudely scrawled atop one of the words. It was replaced with deaths. Oh! The record board had long ago fallen into disrepair. After taking a full 10 seconds to digest what it was looking at, it made its own revision. Oh snap! Another player entered the field. That's today 1. After appending this number with an index finger, she smiled like a flower. She smiled like a flower. Then she began to walk toward the source of the sound. It had been 10 minutes since this rhapsody had begun to echo from the House of Mirrors. The amusement park's entrance returned to as it was before, soulless. Oh, it's getting interesting right here. Who is this enemy, this unknown enemy? In the end, even if Sojiro had been the luckiest man alive, there's no way he should have been able to escape. The question, however, was how much of this was by design, and how much was sheer coincidence. Even Ako, who had made all the arrangements, had no answer. Indeed, there were only 3 things she could say. It was taking longer than expected. He was putting up more of a resistance than she had anticipated, and that choosing the House of Mirrors was a mistake. She had really screwed the pooch in this one. The location itself was an excellent choice, as the House of Mirrors was perfect as a hunting ground, but seeing her own incompetence reflected in the mirrors was beginning to grate on her. So she failed to kill him? Oh my gosh. Sojiro he has magic, he's lucky. The moment Aoko's right arm began to glow, Sojiro made a beeline for the staircase in front of him. The strobing series of blue flashes lit the room behind him. The hunter calmly followed her prey, and the prey desperately ran for his life. That grin. It's just what the doctor wants. Oh man. In stark contrast to Sojiro's frenzied escape, Ako walked briskly up the stairs. She elected not to run after her prey in order to maintain a set distance. As she lacked confidence in her accuracy, the hardest thing for her to deal with would be if he charged right at her and went down fighting. That's true. I was wondering if he was ever going to like change tactics and just dash at her, just an all or nothing dash. But at this distance of 30 or so feet, he posed no threat. By this time her prey drew near, she could fire 10 shots and hit it with at least 4 of them. Her position. The positioning just a moment ago hadn't been ideal. At that distance, in a space that opened, he flanked and rushed her. There was a chance, however small, that it could turn into a fistfight. Currently, Aoko's best weapon was the bullets from her right arm. She was going to capitalize on that advantage. It was in her best interest not to close the gap between them. If there was a good time to approach, it was only after her prey had become exhausted and had lost the will to continue. Would she pierce his leg, shoot him in the back, or perhaps he would just give up after losing himself in the labyrinth? The hunt would end when her target sustained some sort of injury and became unable to run. And Sojiro keep running, man. On Sojiro's end, he could barely bite back on screaming as he bolted through the mage. Even running in a straight line had become difficult, much less searching for an exit. He's running into these mirrors. The corridor stretched out far before him, or so the mirrors blocking the path had made it seem. Panicked, he made a turn to the right. Clutching his head at his right arm, Sojiro led with his left, groping through the air to see whether a wall was there or not. He dove down the hall to the left, narrowly dodging the bullets, targeting his leg. Urged on by the sound of approaching footsteps, he ran without thinking. That last one was close. A hair closer would have meant his life. He caught the odor of the burnt hair from the back of his neck. He was very lucky, or perhaps very unlucky. If he were actually lucky, he would not be in this situation in the first place. True. The second floor of the House of Mirrors was structured like a giant spiral. It would wound left, starting from the outside wall. Eventually, it would lead to a dead end. The more he tried to escape, the more cornered he'd become, as though he were trapped in a twisty guillotine. His stifled screams threatened to leak out as complaints. No matter what he did, he was going to be killed. All of his struggles merely served to prolong the inevitable. As he ran, no matter how many mirrored walls he rammed himself into, he ran. Even after crashing so hard that his forehead bled as he saw stars, he ran. He wants to live. Pain shot through him at every turn. The more frantically he ran, the more intense he smashed into the invisible walls. Man, he about to kill himself running into these walls. His body began to understand the rule and begged him not to run anymore. His breath was already ragged after sprinting a couple hundred feet. No matter how he thought about it, this was not normal. This was way too crazy. This was all just a bad joke. If he turned around now, she would apologize to him for taking it too far. His mind had gone blank. As his body continued to slam into the mirrors again and again, his feet slowed as they began to believe that perhaps it really was all a joke. But then, he felt a chill, a touch of death upon his neck. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Sojourner knew this kind of terrible chill far too well. Ever since he arrived in the city, he had come face to face with more than one or two near-death experiences. For someone who did not understand the city life, his present predicament was not unlike when he first experienced the traffic in the streets or the commuter rush in the station platform. He was far from an innocent baby, unable to comprehend life or fear. Rather, everything he had ever known before became irrelevant when he was flung into a completely different cultural sphere. Even society's promises of safety, something urbanates took for granted, were threats unknown. So he was used to this already. Though, if he were to be honest, he was dissatisfied with some things. Things superfluous to necessity. This world was overflowing with valueless things, and they were all dangerous in some way. Even the everyday necessities sold at the convenience store were, as far as he was concerned, amazing tools. Civilization had raised the standard of living so high that it had numbered humanity's sense of danger. The city's constant pursuit of wealth and convenience was a poison to a country boy like Sojiro. And he did not have the capacity to accept these conveniences. That it was possible for such conveniences to easily and suddenly be misused and cause unintended accidents had always made him anxious. Why? He had to wonder why he was even here. Man. How ironic. It took the real threat of death to finally make him realize, like a divine revelation, they had failed to understand until now. He'd always had to expect the unexpected. Near-death experiences were more common than one might think. To begin with, safety was something that came with a price. Believing alive meant the opposite was always lurking around the corner. It was just like a streetlight at night. When the sun rose, its illumination would naturally disappear. Another barrage of strange projectiles whizzed mercilessly by him. He recalled in the back of his mind the charred remains of someone at the hands of that blue flame 2 nights prior. So he knows it does damage. Lethal damage. Somehow this situation reminded him of a horse being led by a dangling carrot. For now he lifted his head and continued to run through the labyrinth. But for what purpose? Though he knew the pain in his chest was very real, he felt disconnected from it. The night sky visible through the skylight was a muddy ultramarine, no longer resembling the one he knew. And managed to calm himself. Soldier began to laugh in despair, as though something rather precious had been broken. Everything had become meaningless anyway. Even though his legs somehow made their way forward at the sight of her reflection in the mirror. It's like a game of cat and mouse. Sojiro fled through the labyrinth of mirrors. Then after 4 minutes, that strangely unreal tension ended. Ooh! Close call. The ninth shot of blue light hit inches away from him. It exploded the moment it made impact, launching Sojiro into the opposite wall. Of all the fire that he had taken thus far, this shot indisputably brought him the closest to death. Oh man. Groaning, he collapsed to the floor. His back was on fire with pain. He was not bleeding, and was lucky he could still even scream. Yet his body refused to move. Physically and mentally, he still had something to spare. The pain was not so bad that it was preventing him to stand up. It was just that there was a skylight above him, and he could glimpse the dark of the night sky beyond. The feeling that overcame him was a raw, selfish bout of grief. It was just so cruel. To have to stare at that for the remainder of whatever short life he had left. Sojiro's ragged breath slowed. For all intents and purposes, he had given up. He had given up running away from the sound of pursuing footsteps, and perhaps even the problem at the root of everything. He said, at least it was someone I knew. Sojiro Suzuki felt things that, in any other circumstance, he would never feel. Incidentally, without exaggeration or embellishment, this was the only mistake he had ever made in his entire life. Staring vacantly into the night sky above, Sojiro listened as the footsteps drew nearer.
Give up?
It was the closest her voice had ever been to him. Perhaps feeling that he really had given up, she approached his collapsed form. In the dark, mirror-lined corridor, he could not make out her expression. Without a word, Sojiro raised his eyes to meet his murderer.
返事がないならそれでいいけど。調子狂うわ。普通どうして殺そうとするのかぐらい聞くものじゃない？
Akko spoke from within the shadows. His eyes widened in bewilderment. Now that she had mentioned it, he realized that would have been the obvious question to ask. Sojiro is a funny character, man. He's like, oh yeah, I never asked you. Why are you trying to kill me, huh? You're just going to accept it and be like, oh yeah, at least it's Aoko. No other questions. Like, oh man, it's funny. He had more or less picked up on the fact that he was being killed for learning some secret, but it was human nature to want to know more. She's like, come on, man. Do I really have to... Do I have to be the one to give you all this exposition? Well, yes, in a way. A simple affirmation. His face was a mixture of resignation and a forlorn longing. He thought for a moment before. Oh, he doesn't care. He responded in a mature, subdued voice. Someone opened the door. His response was clear, rather gallantly so.
そう。じゃ、殺すけど。死ぬの怖くないの？
怖いに決まってる。何がそうだ。
Probably will, man. Probably will. His face turned wry as he objected, to which Aoko frowned. As nonchalant as he could be, he was honest about his feelings.
そりゃ怖いでしょ。私だって怖いと思うし。
I like this casual conversation she's having. Oh, there's an ad right now? Okay. I wonder about that. Ads during the video. It's like, does it like pause it and then return to where you left off? Or does it just skip ahead? I think it skips ahead. So, anywho, I like how Aozaki is really nonchalant with this conversation right now. Of course, that'd be scary. I'd be scared too, you know.
でも悪いわね。我慢して。人でなしと罵ってくれて結構よ。今、そういった意味じゃあんたと同じ。普通の道徳がないのよ。だから、必要なら人も殺せる。
Huh. Sojiro's fingers twisted in response to her indifferent tone. Twitched. As if to say, despite having given up on just about everything, his body could not let those words slide.
人殺しなんて良くないぞ。
Ooh, he said, hey.
分かってるって言ってるでしょ。
Akko raised her right hand. The light from the crest illuminated her face. It goes without saying that her expression was unchanged. She was not crying, nor was she smiling. She was a young woman who had excised her feelings. Deal with it was just another thing Sojourner could not let slide. Sojourner could read on Aoko's face that she was not herself. She was in pain, and to a degree he had never seen in her.
すまない。ちょっといいかな。
何？ここまで悲壮感を盛り上げておいて、やっぱり逃げるなんてのは却下よ。
Yo, use some talk no jutsu or something, man. Persuasion. He unconsciously smiled at Aoko's ruthless counter and breathed a sigh of relief. He had misread the pain he saw in her face. This was the same Aoko. Sojourner laughed out loud in a genuine joy, a laugh that most other people would have taken as an insult.
遺言でも聞いてあげようと思った私が
She's like, okay, you just gonna laugh now?
っていうか、今の小バカにした笑いがあんたの遺言ってことで OK？
いや、そうじゃなくて、あそこにいる人は青崎の友人なのか？
Oh! Out of nowhere, Sojourner pointed behind Aoko.
はあ？
Aoko thought that must have been that old or overused distraction technique. Look over there! It might work. You never know, y'all. It might save you one day. If this had been a Japanese comedy act, this would be a part where she gave him a whack on the paper fan. But after giving it a second thought, she realized Sojourner didn't have the capacity for understanding old or even new tricks. Exactly what I'm saying. like for a second I was like, yo, that's smart, but Sojourner, he's not like that. Who is this?
何言って？
Perhaps his honest disposition had been to his benefit. Without thinking, Aoko gave into her curiosity and turned her gaze toward the direction in which his finger was pointed. And there was something that should not have been there in the maze. Something with a creaking, wooden smile. It was the ominous, creepy, uncanny figure of a girl. No, don't tell me more about this amusement park. Okay. I'm about to say, are they about to bring us outside again? Oh my gosh. A puppet. An unusual figure with 2 arms and 2 legs stood silently in the darkness. It was only for a moment its beauty, which was even apparent from afar, dulled the insanity of the current situation. Oh! Extend. The utterly known threat made Aoko freeze on the spot. Avoiding it didn't even occur to her. Humans possess intelligence and knowledge, but when confronted with the unknown, they fail to process what to do. And... oh no! A shriek escaped Aoko's mouth. The magical attack crossed the 30-foot gap in an instant. The arm of the girl who had appeared at the rear of the corridor was slender and quick. It extended to a near impossible length, striking Aoko from behind. Aoko crashed into the wall as she fought back an anguishing whimper. The attacker retracted her arm. Sojourner sprang to his feet. He darted to her side and used all the strength he could muster to get her to her feet. Oh snap. He could not believe how light she was. In Sojourner's mind, Aoko was an extraordinary individual. He expected that if he were to ever touch her, it would be apparent she was far stronger than he. But in reality, she felt about as heavy as you would expect a 100-pound girl to feel. Oh! Meanwhile, the thing continued to reel in its arms, as if it were some sort of mechanism. Having extended more than 30 feet from the elbow joint, it clinked as it returned to its previous shape and size. Aqua tore her hand away from Sojiro's. Suddenly she felt her knees buckle from under her, but Sojiro caught her before she could hit the ground and helped her to her feet. Well, yes and no? Question mark? He looked back at the eerie shadow 30 feet away as it finished retracting its arm. Aqua grabbed her lower back as she answered. A searing pain shot through her.
痛いっちゃ痛いけど
Yeah, but it's like an electrocuted or something.
あれだけ絶好の奇襲をしておいてそれともこの距離じゃ当たっても致命傷にならない
The longer it extends its arms, the less damage it gives? I don't know.
あるわけないか
Was it trying to absorb her,
別
like,
の意味があると見る
something about her? Ako tried to steady her breathing as she assessed the damage done to her back. The pain was quick to fade and her breathing returned to normal. Or maybe they're trying to capture her, like incapacitate her for a second? Maybe. For the time being, her motor functions were, well, it said one, well, in the beginning they said to kill one person at least. That one person could still be Sojiro and then they just need to capture Aoko, but who knows? Which meant, or maybe it's just to kill Aoko, but we'll see. Which meant the real damage was elsewhere.
青崎あれ
分かってるわ黙ってて
Blue light glowed across the gloom. The magical energy generated from her breathing was accumulating in her right arm. The magical energy was the fuel. The formula was its igniter. For Aoko, this was a little more of a reenactment of 2 evenings ago. Next time the puppet extended its arms, Aoko would fire a magic bullet as fast as she could. About approximately 30 feet. As long as Aoko could secure a 2-second window, she could create a counterattack to end their duel. It made its move. With its head tilted down, there was no expression to be seen, and in the darkness, its apparent age was impossible to make out. To the 2 humans, the puppet was not dissimilar to a faceless ghost. His left arm slowly came up with a grinding sound. His movements were dull, as if the joints were rusty. And the right arm, which had been extended earlier, hung to its side. Though the puppet's mouth was hidden by its long locks, the sense was that it was smiling.
さっきと用途が違うあれが本命しずきくんどいて
Was she going to shoot? Oh no! She threw herself into Sojiro and extended her arm, its arm extended at that very moment. The timing was impeccable. In a single second, Aoko's magic bullet scored a direct hit at the puppet's arm, reversing its trajectory and sending it crashing into the puppet's body with a violent explosion. Or at least, that is what would have happened had the magic formula been invoked. Ooh, that was close. She barely avoided being struck once again. When her magical magecraft failed her, intuition took over and she just managed to get away.
やられた最初のはそういうことか
Huh. She clenched her teeth in frustration as though racing a mile a minute. Fight or flight. It only had one arm left, which would take time to retract. This is the best shot Aoko had at defeating it. If she could evade the right arm just a fraction, she could get close enough to.
Vivo in som solitare puturis inferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies.
Oh! That was unexpected. A crackle echoed through the corridor. A poetic murmur contained through magical energy for a mage to perceive. The verse itself was Latin. Yeah, okay, so it was Latin. But it contained hints of a language of curses. Gander? Originally, they knew they were words meant to curse a hated adversary. However,
Mea animae mortalis, ote me futura negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definire ambiguum est. Teodi et te am, conveniamus insomnio ipsi.
The puppet was directing the words at itself. Curses beget curses. The victim calls down a curse on the silence, creating a vicious cycle of negativity. The incantation was meant to do just that. However, this was ultimately a one-puppet show, an unprecedented source of power akin to auto-intoxication. As unbelievable as it seemed, the cycle of curses had been turned into a perpetual motion device.
何それレベル高すぎじゃない
Ako abandoned the idea of digging her heels in. It was time to flee with due haste.
何してんの？あんたも来る！
Yeah, Sojiro, what are you doing? She grabbed Sojiro's hand and ran as fast as she could, deeper into the realm of mirrors. The crackling voice continued to murmur behind them.
Proximi mich negligentes ferunt. Omnes nos peccantes fims. Et omnes nos edem fims. Omnes nos peccatores sums. Venit domum meum. Lut simile sum neum.
Gouge
Et
out my
pulvera
heart.
simile quotidianum. Te judico.
Death be upon you. Ooh. Akko fought against the pain in her back as she ran through the mirrored corridor. She dragged Sojiro by the hand.
青崎、傷は？
別に背骨がしびれてる程度よ。内臓は平気だし、出血もないみたい。
She cursed inwardly at how much of a mess she felt, though. Unlike Sojiro, Akko did not run into any transparent walls. Thanks not to a superior sight, rather a preparation, she hammered the layout of the building into her memory. Okay.
平気ってわかるのか？
そりゃ自分の体だもの。身体管理は基礎中の基礎よ。
Makes sense. Akko's matter-of-fact answer contrasted with Sojiro's nervous questioning. The corridor grew shorter with each and every left turn. At first, they were able to advance in a straight line for about 100 feet at a time. But by now, they were forced to turn at a corner every 50 feet or so.
あいつはあの夜の。
多分ね。同じタイプだと思う。
Same pattern.
貴重なオートマタを惜しげもなく使い捨てるなんて、よっぽどお金持ちなんだろうけど。
They're either pretty wealthy or they have a lot of good resources. They're resourceful. Sojiro frowned his brow. He was grateful that she was answering his questions, but baffled by the strange words she was using.
青崎ストップ。もう随分走ったぞ。あいつは曲がり角一つ分向こうだ。少し休もう。
His words suggested that he was still concerned about her injuries. Akko shook her head in irritation.
あの距離を狙ってくる相手に通路一つ分のリードは無意味よ。せめて二つ分に行くまで走るの。
Exactly. I'm trying to get out of this park. Sojiro nodded. With that matter as settled, he
なん
asked.
で俺を連れて行ってるんだ？
逃げられたくないからじゃない、バカ。
She said, hey, I kill you, no one else. Answering curtly, Akko glared at her naive prey. The two of them headed for the next corner. Their legs began to slow as they rounded one more. Akko rubbed her back as she tried to catch her breath. Though Akko had insisted that she was fine, it appeared to have been bravado. And in the usual clueless, Sojiro felt the desperation they were in. He stood behind Akko with his arms folded. While they had a moment, he tried to make sense of everything. First, Akko had nearly killed him. Though he was saved at the last possible second, it was by a strange, stretchy woman Akko had burned to ashes 2 nights prior. He could barely make it out that night, but he considered it at her because it looked female. The woman's attack wounded Akko's back and forced her to flee. Akko had taken Sojiro with her, claiming that the reason she did it was so it was to prevent her prey from escaping. In other words,
青崎はまだ諦めてないんだな。
当たり前よ。あんなやつ、仮に2体と半分始末しても、あんた用の余力は残せるわ。
Huh. Her tone was sharp, but even Sojiro could see that she was struggling to stay confident. The damage to her body was too much to afford her any optimism. Still, the fear in her eyes refused to accept her circumstances.
中がところどころショートしてる。あの右腕は回路を
Oh, so that's what it was. Yeah, jammed. Okay, so it was an attack. Though the proper response would have been for her to tremble in fear, she did nothing but shake her fists in anger. The disruption of formula was only supposed to work on absolute beginners. If it had been her roommate, the arm would have been repelled the instant it hit her, and the attacker's circuits burned out rather than her own. Ah. Attempting to establish a link in the magical circuit of another mage was like presenting your heart on a silver platter. It would be of no use in a battle against a superior mage. And yet her adversary had been designed to do just that. Coupled with the attacks in areas of Misaki under Aoko's jurisdiction these last few weeks, it was a clear statement from the enemy who as of 2 days ago had revealed itself as a fellow mage. In other words, the puppet saw Aoko as no threat at all.
敵ながら正確な判断だこと。
While she was still angry, the whirlwind of emotions within her started to fade. Her face was that of a hunter far beyond her years.
なんか俺の時より真剣だな。
まあね、あんたの時は遊びが入ってたし。
It's true, Soju was not sure. I mean, he was about to die. I mean, of course she was taking this thing more seriously. Soju was not sure whether to be happy or sad at that.
わからないことだらけで何を聞いていいかわからないんだけど、一つだけいいか。
Ako didn't respond. Her eyes were focused on the darkness before them. The silence was heavy, and the darkness was like a noose closing in on them. A noose. Did I say moose? Anyways, but Soju continued in spite of her indifference.
青崎はあいつも殺すのか。
Well, yeah, they're trying to kill me. A silence fell over them, but it was as if the gloom was pulling them in. No response. The breathing was the only sound echoing the dim corridor. There stood Sojiro, forcing her to confront her sins, and the magical girl who continued to ignore him. They spent a few seconds seemingly frozen in time.
そう。それがあなたのキーワードみたいね。
Ako whispered in a lifeless tone. Her sigh was tinged with both resignation and contempt.
何？
Huh?
独り言よ、忘れて。それと言っとくけど、あいつは人間じゃないわ。信じられないだろうけど、自分の意志で動く人形なの。この前のも、今のやつもね。
Sojiro nodded as he processed information. Not only did he not doubt her story, but he seemed to have accepted it as at face value.
なんか落ち着いてるわね、あなた。
まさかもう何が何だかわからないからあまり考えないことにしてる。
Exactly. He said, I'm just going to take it all with a grain of salt and be like, we're being attacked. I just gotta survive.
ただ人形に関しては別にどうということはない。
もしかして他でも自動人形を見たことあるとか？
都会の人形ってああいうものじゃないのか？
Sojiro, man, you are a character. She really stopped herself from falling to her knees. She's like, I keep falling for this tomfoolery. Of course, how could she have forgotten? She was dealing with a bona fide, natural-born moron. As a student who transferred from the isolation of the mountains like an endangered species, his utter lack of common sense rendered anything miraculous as mundane. If automobiles were moving hunks of metal, then moving puppets were nothing to write home about. Wait, that meant to him the incident from the other night had been extraordinary. Exactly. He was like, oh, another night in the city. He's like, okay, people shooting magic and stuff, or throwing fireballs and puppets and stuff. Oh, another night in the city. Oh man, you might have even assumed it was an everyday occurrence in the city.
参った。いっぺん頭の中覗いてみたいっていうか、ほんとここまで来ると感心するわ。調子が狂うのも当然だった。普通は私に襲われた時点でもっと違う反応をするはずなのに。
Yeah, okay.
化け物とかお化けとかさ。でもあなたにとってはそういうこともあるで済まされてたわけなんだ。なんかバカみたいね、私。
She restrained her face Her strained face returned to normal for a moment. It hit her. There had been another way to handle this without anyone getting hurt. But the damage had already been done. There were no do-overs in life, nor should there be. Her mistaken assumptions had sent that situation spiraling out of control. But now that Sojiro was involved, she had to make sure that her secret was safe with him. Even if there had been another, better option, that ship had sailed. Human relationships were ultimately driven by mutual misunderstandings, like tapestries woven from mismatched intentions. Break time was over. There stood Aoko Aozaki and Sojiro Shizuki. The first idle conversation they had since first meeting had come to an end. Not that they had a choice in the matter. It was the jarring murmuring from around the corner that cut it short.
Nemo mefnus meminit, vidroit extinct sest. Initio eraberamos, dom revimus dolores sunt. Nemo adiuvat.
Paris, we were born wrong, life is suffering, somebody save me. Huh. The enemy was just around the corner, visible in the mirrors parallel to it.
悠長に話してる場合じゃないわね。とにかく今は距
They're
離
about
を
to break through the wall. Oh, they're switching up. A new attack. In contrast to Aoko's elegant blues, the lights were a malicious red.
感動打ち
There was a momentary flash of light before she even extended her arm. But the instant she saw the enemy, her dormant feelings erupted once more.
さっきから邪魔なのよ
Ooh, okay, what, a shield? She channeled all her pent-up anger and shunted it into her right arm. The fog that filled the corridor was no magical weaving, but rather a barricade of raw energy. It was equivalent to setting ablaze to 3 buckets of gasoline to create a wall of fire, in the hope it would stop an arrow in flight. If the puppet had attacked with its arm, it could have pierced such a wall easily, but because it had loosed curses with no definite form, the wall of energy repelled the attack. While it was a huge waste of magical energy, it was the only means Aoko had to protect herself in that very moment. Unfortunately, its protection was reserved to Aoko alone. Sojiro held his hand to his mouth. While the curses had been weakened to the point where Aoko could no longer feel it, it had plenty of effect on Sojiro, who was not a mage. Oh no. As if it understood this fact, the puppet turned its gaze from Aoko to the unanticipated human behind her.
こいつは関係ないでしょ
Enraged, she swung her arm forward once again. The blue light formed a wall to block the Gandor for a scant few seconds. It was enough of an opening to exploit. Just as Aoko was forming the wall, the puppet pointed its right arm at her face and... Oh! Before the rocket of death could be fired, Sojiro scooped her up in his arms. Yeah, what? Sojiro, man, as he mustered the strength to do so was a mystery, but he turned his back to the puppet and took off running. While carrying Aoko? This dude Sojiro he's a cool character, man. He's a little out there, but I like Sojiro's cool, man. He was a nimble sprinter, resembling a deer leaping across obstacles. Sojiro rounded 2 more corners, ignoring whatever complaints Aoko was making, and eventually stopped in the middle of the second floor. He sat her down. That surprised me. Sojiro's shoulders heaved as he caught his breath. As light as she was, running while carrying someone else would make anyone winded. As she looked up at him in incomprehension. It made no sense to her. Well, maybe that's adrenaline. If he had the stamina to pick her up and run, surely he could have stood up and escaped when he had been downed earlier. His words were unfiltered as ever. Though in this moment, fighting for their lives, he lacked something of his usual absent-mindedness.
さあ、忘れた、そんなことは。
Though he may have turned away because he regretted saying it loud, his words spoke volumes. Hey, what up, Mohammed? Yup, up to chapter 5 right now. For some reason, it pained Aoko to see him like that.
それより青崎、唐突に気分が悪いんだが。
Yeah, you cursed,
あ
man.
の赤い光も、その。
ええ、魔術の類よ。弾道打ちって言ってね。北欧の呪詛の一つ。魔術回路のある私には効かないけど、抵抗のないあなたには効果てきめんみたいね。
That makes sense. Makes sense. Okay.
青崎には効かないのか。じゃあ、危ないのはあの腕だけだな。
Okay, yo, Sojiro with that calming collectness. Aoko had no idea why he was relieved, but she gritted her teeth and fought down the urge to snap at him. There was no use in yelling at a time like this. Above all, she felt that it would have been petty in the extreme to voice her annoyance right now.
そうね。注意するのは伸ばしてくる腕だけ。大した相手じゃないわ、やっぱり。
This time, it was not false bravado. Oh snap, you're actually right. You know, in the back of my head, I was like, yo, this kind of reminds me of something. Like, that's true. That is true. That's funny. Yeah, that's the same like thing. Yeah, because he was about to kill Shiro. Man, that's the same type of thing. Wow, that's funny. Man, this dude, this dude Nazi, yeah, reusing ideas. You say, if it worked once, why not do it again, right? This time it was not false bravado. Such an enemy would normally be a breeze for Aoko Aozaki. But her shameless negligence had led to the disruption of her magic circuits, making her even less formidable than her enemy. At this point, Aoko had no way of attacking. The only option left to her was to wait for it to expend all of its magical energy, but its perpetual curse mechanism made that a non-starter. This game of tag would not end until one of them was dead. She realized that she was in the same position as she cornered Sojiro in earlier. She glanced at her right arm. She could not imagine how she had gotten into such a mess with her magical energy at more than half its capacity. That is true. That is true. So, I mean, it technically, in a way, this came before. But yeah, you're right. Who knows? This had to be karma for having enjoyed toying with Sojiro earlier. She grumbled under her breath as she shifted her focus. She had the fuel for the fire, but not the igniter. And that killing machine would chase her until the end of time if need be. What she would do next was blindingly clear. She had to get back to normal. Okay.
ごめん、考え事してた。確か。よし、合ってる。しずきくん、そこに横道あるのわかる？
Okay, plan of attack. Aoko pointed. He could see nothing but the walls of the corridor. He said, "Is there more mirrors?" But for one thing, the floor had nothing but left turns. And Aoko was pointing to the right.
2階は中心まで行くと1階に降りる階段があるんだけど、それは私が壊したから使えない。
Gotta jump down, man.
けど、ここの作りも意地が悪くてね。よく見れば、右に曲がる通路もあるのよ。あとは注意して探せば、1階の階段までショートカットできる。悪いけど、一人で行って。
Aoko turned her back to Sojiro and started walking to the opposite direction of the escape route and down the long corridor toward the puppet in pursuit.
あいつは無差別だから、ここで壊さないといけない。魔術師は魔術師同士で争うのはいいんだけど、
Okay.
みだりに一般人に手を出しちゃいけないって決まりがあるの。
True.
あいつの目的は私のわけだし、結果がどうあれ、すっきりするでしょ。
And you get to live, maybe, Sojiro for another day. If Aoko won, the puppet would be destroyed. If Aoko lost, its objective would be completed and it would shut down. Either way, them going their separate ways would mean Sojiro survived. This is what Aoko meant. though she explained it as if the events were happening in two totally different people. I somewhat have an, like, there's like some things I know, but I don't completely know like the build up to them. So, more or less putting things together as it comes by. So I kind of have an idea what may happen. So.
運が良ければ入り口までたどり着けるわ。それじゃあ、また明日ね。
And also, that's just an image I grabbed. So this is a random image I grabbed as well. So that just happens to maybe connect to this. So given how everything's been building up, but even Sojiro could tell she was just trying to act tough. But she had already disappeared around the corner by the time he thought to stop her. Okay. Still continuing. So, well then. Mentally, Aoko bemoaned the disaster she was in. The quality of this puppet was on a completely different level compared to the one from the park 2 days ago. An auto-encanting perpetual motion machine was a rarity in and of itself, but this puppet was also equipped for battle with its extending arms and Gendo projecting crystalline eyes. It was a first-class product that, if put on the market, would sell for hundreds of millions of yen. And it's used to hunt her down. Although that was only when factoring in its value as an antique. Okay. For the purposes of combat, it would have made more sense to mobilize a significantly less expensive familiar. To use such a precious commodity as a tool for murder marked this puppet's master as a completely different breed of crazy from the enemies she had faced up until now.
Verbo in sum, solitare putresque inferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies.
Yes.
Teobeam.
Huh.
来たわね。
The sound of the crackling music box filled the air. The automata, animated by its own curses, approached. The corridor measured approximately 30 feet in length. Ako lay in wait around the corner further down the hall, anticipating the puppet's appearance. This was not to buy Sojiro time to escape far from it. Ako had concluded that she couldn't make a break for it under the current circumstances. Even if she did try to escape, and by some miracle made it out of the house of mirrors, that was as far as she would go. Outside with no cover, Ako would quickly be overtaken and skewered from behind. Skewered. As long as her magecraft was disabled, escape was impossible. Instead, she chose to force the enemy back. Her situation was not the most favorable, but neither was the puppet's. Though this narrow hall gave Aoko no place to run, it in turn prevented the puppet from reaching its full speed. That was the weak point of this machine. Automata of its era had a tendency to struggle with minute changes in speed. Okay, so she'll use that to her advantage. She flowed energy into her shorted circuits. Her blood flow and magical energy supply were unstable. It would be difficult to construct a formula of this state. All she could do was harden her right arm by imbuing it with as much energy as she could. Doing so turned her arm into an improvised weapon like a hammer or bat. Assuming she could manage to get into close combat range, this was the best she could do. All she needed now was a plan of attack. The question wasn't what weapon to use, but how to use the weapon she had. The simplest way would be to use the mirror's reflection to hide and then rush the puppet from its blind spot, except for one major problem. It did not have a sense of sight in the first place. The puppet's view of the world around it did not stem from visual feedback, but from the mapping of topography of its surroundings. In theory, it was the same as a bat's echolocation. Okay, that's a good way to put it. The environment could be measured based on the emission and return of high-frequency sound waves. Excuse me. Those chants served as sensor pulses. As far as the puppet was concerned, the mirrors were no better than its transparent panes. pans. Yeah, making even the thought of an ambush laughable.
近づけば近づくほどよりリアルに察知される。本当は遠距離からの狙撃が最適なんだけど、ガンドを撃ってくるならフィンの一撃ぐらい隠してるわよね。
Gander was Scandinavian in origin and, considering its simplicity, highly versatile. It was most effective at impairing a target's health by pointing a finger. As a single attack magecraft, it was limited to only causing illnesses, but there is a secret technique said to be the greatest mastery of the Gander shot. The fin shot. Adventure Time? That was tacky. It could do more than cause simple illness. It was a deadly curse that could stop the heart. The wound on her back set her nerves on fire. An unarmed girl with deadly automaton. It was clear that she was the one destined for death. She considered her slim chances of survival when... Oh... A vision sent chills down her spine. Yeah, the cuss? Quietly using everything she could to clamp down on the feeling, Alco faced her all too familiar illusion. She clenched her teeth to keep them from making a deafening clatter. But there, the sensation of fingers crawling up her neck, behind her the specter stared and laughed. This alone made Alco want to bolt. On top of it all, when Alco tried to mentally simulate the coming fight, she estimated a 2 in 10 chance of dying in the first 5 seconds. Dang. 20%. At times, her predictions were harsher than reality. If Alco fought the puppet 10 times, she would die twice. She could not stop herself from visualizing her own corpse. Man, gotta think positive right here. She imagined herself collapsing, crumbling under the puppet's curse. Her eyeballs swollen like a blowfish, blood and other fluids oozing from every bodily orifice. 1 in 5, 1 in 5, 1 in 5, and a 1 in 10 chance of death was bad enough. But 1 in 5, it drove her crazy. That's 20% versus 10. Akko forced down her heart as it tried to escape from her mouth. Who the heck's texting me, man? Her dad escaped from her mouth, yeah. Taking in a deep breath, she peered at her own reflection. She thought back to that white night half a year ago. This, she decided, was nothing compared to that. 6 months ago, at the Koinji estate, the Hound of White Roses, the wander snatch that appeared from within the thick fog, had killed Alco 100 times out of 10. Ooh. She said, this is nothing compared to that. A dark curse shattered Alco's daydream. It was only 30 feet away. The puppet rounded the corner. Either side stood in the shadows, their forms indistinct. Yeah, shooting that red again. The puppet gave no warning. Without preamble, it swiftly fired a Gander barrage. Woo! Just as Alco planned, the curses fizzled out as they hit her mist-like barrier of magical energy. Yo, man, I'm loving the art. The protection would only last a few seconds, giving her just enough time to... Ooh. Okay, its stretchable spear sprang toward Alco's face.
Bingo!
Oh, as planned! The lethal weapon grazed her cheek. All her experience analyzing the puppet's attack pattern gave her the wherewithal to evade the attack by a hair's breadth. It was one thing if a puppeteer were pulling the strings, but autonomous dolls had their limitations. Yeah, for real, this was made 2012. This quality is just astounding. The puppet would use a given attack for a given range, and she could adjust her tactics to that.
いける、このまま。
Before its arms had a chance to fully retract, she charged the puppet. It was a risky gamble, but her overall chances were slim to begin with. The scales tipped in her favor. If her predictions were correct, there were two ways she could die. One was from a fin shot fired at that range. Oh. And the other was if the puppet attack pattern was beyond her ability to foresee. Something unpredictable, instantaneous mass transfer, otherwise known as mass displacement. Immediately after Ako dodged the puppet's arm, something smashed into her abdomen. Ooh. The head-on collision from its shoulder felt like a rocket, but where had the ability to propel itself come from? Puppets like these were not built to have the ability to jet around like that. Dodging everything in her power to stay conscious in spite of the pain, Ako could just make out what had happened. It was cold because the arm, Yes, the puppet's arm had not returned to his body. It was lodged in the wall and reeled itself from the other direction. Makes sense. Swallowing her surprise, she hastily pulled herself back up. Her abdomen, specifically her diaphragm, had been dealt a significant blow. The attack left her disoriented. Thankfully, the puppet was surprisingly lightweight. Her bones and organs were intact and she had sustained no life-threatening damage. She was having a hard time breathing. However, she was shaken. Though she had managed to keep her calm, in another 2 seconds, she would be back on her feet. No, that was 2 seconds too long. She told herself to calm down, that she was already calm. She'd only briefly lost her bearings. She was fine. She could recover her breath and her vision later if only her body would move. It's like, yo, forget about all that. We gotta move. Above her, Ako could hear the warped noise of a powerful force. She could once more feel the touch of death. The puppet was so close that Ako could reach out and touch it. It also meant that it could reach out and kill Ako. Quickly, by intuition alone, Ako rolled over to the puppet's right flank. His arms still embedded within the wall. From here it could not attack. She had made her right decision, and her dizziness faded. Exactly. Now we're getting into Latin now. Like, oh man. Ako pulled himself back up. It was her turn. Ooh, that is creepy. It was only an instant. Within this labyrinth of mirrors, she saw the image of herself. Yeah. A blinding, brilliant light flashed. Lacerations appeared across the walls. At the last moment, Ako managed to thicken the magical energy running through her veins into a primitive form of magecraft resistance. Just barely saved her life from what must have been the puppet's ace in the hole. Puppet bore a striking resemblance to Ako. This powerful curse was not satisfied with stopping Ako's heart, but destroying her entire being. Yeah, I wonder. Ako did not even have the time to be shocked. Huh. This is her chance for a counterattack. The puppet's balance was unsteady, its right arm still embedded in the wall. Ako prepared to give its defensiveless body a strong kick, but her knees buckled, and she collapsed right into a heap on the floor. Huh. A sudden nausea and lightheadedness overcame Aoko. Body temperature began to rapidly lower. Yeah, she mentioned her sister last episode. Well, last chapter? She mentioned her sister already at some point. And like a bit of like their a little bit on their background, what happened and stuff. But I do know a bit about her sister. That's why I already have some like I know a bit about her sister already. But as for the whole context and everything in here, I'm not completely sure yet. So, man, okay. This whole time I was spreading its curses the whole time. She knows too late. The puppet's curses circled the hall. The curses chant that puppets used a source of power doubled as a defense mechanism, crippling those who drew near with illness. She bore the full brunt of the entire time she was in close proximity to it. Although Aoko had magic circuits, she was succumbing just as Sojiro had. Okay. Languidly, she forced her deteriorating body to jump back. In fact, we actually saw her sister at one point, but they haven't. Well, never mind. I'll let the story roll out as it goes. But with all the energy she could muster, she forced her way past the exhaustion caused by the curse. However, Aoko's blood pressure took a steep nosedive, not from the curse, induced amnesia. Yeah, that's where, well, I didn't get that from Karen no Kyoku. I need to go back to that. I remember seeing her from there. Yeah, okay, not Mr. Okay. But, yeah, I know her from there. I remember she was also in, like, something else, too, that I saw, like, briefly, but, oh, wait. Oh, it's actual music. It sounds like my phone, but anyways. However, Aoko's blood pressure took a steep nosedive, not from the curse-induced anemia, but from what appeared in front of her. They stood in perfect harmony. In front of Aoko was the automata that shared her face, his left arm held out like an arrow. The deadly weapon shot forward and honed in on her heart. The moment before it made contact, the moment she heard that fearless voice, completely out of this place, this storm of violence, Aoko's body was pulled forcefully to one side. Once again, the extending arm cut through empty air. While Puppet quickly retracted his arm, Sojiro took a brief opportunity to take Aoko by the hand. This dude Sojiro is a whole W right now. What the heck? he came back. Man. Each chapter, I'm just like, yo, Sojiro is becoming a cooler character. Like, man. Sojiro ran through the corridor as fast as he could, only stopping when he had to pull enough distance between them and the puppet. Though he had saved her, she looked angry rather than grateful. This did not keep Sojiro from saying his piece. This dude, this guy right here. This guy Sojiro is funny. In other words, let's finish this today. A rather awkward proposal. Ako remained silent. She was also rather angry. Now that she could not figure out what made him tick. Nor because he returned after escaping. Not because he was spouting his typical airheaded not lines. It was, she supposed, that instant. The fact that when he grabbed her hand, her mind had completely gone blank. Ako find it unforgivable. Which beckoned the response.
Anata, shoki.
He is. I answered that for you. Unintentionally insane. In the heat of the moment, she blurted it before she could stop herself.
それとも自殺願望でもあったわけ? 私もあいつもあんたなんか殺す対象に過ぎないのよ。
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He got kicked out the swim. Yeah, he got kicked out the swimming club.
少なくとも恩を売る相手じゃない。
Oh man. He joined the club and he said, "Yo, I can't swim." Oh man, Sojiro, he just cracks me up. At the very least, I don't owe you a dang thing.
言
Okay.
っとくけど、私助けられたぐらいで曲がる信念は持ち合わせていないから。
Sojiro nodded, clearly unperturbed.
青崎がそんな可愛らしいもんじゃないのはこの夜だけで骨身に染みてるよ。
Nah, it's true. She found herself slightly offended.
けど君は勘違いをしてるから少し正そう。あいつの狙いは青崎だけじゃない。君だけじゃなく俺も殺す気だと思う。
She was having none of it. Her eyes shot daggers that's his way.
話は最後まで聞く。どうしてかっていうと1階の入り口あるだろ。なんでかあそこから先に進めないんだ。逃げたくても逃げ出せなくて仕方なく戻ってきた。
Okay. They might as well save you, huh? Ako's eyes widened ever so slightly in amazement. Not out of shock, but rather admiration that her enemy would go to such lengths.
それにさっきので完全に敵扱いされた。あの人形こっちをじろっと睨んできたし、いや一瞬でよく見えなかったけど生きた心地しなかったな。青崎も気をつけた方がいい。多分よっぽど怖い顔をしているに違いないぞ。
It is. I agree, man.
それはご親切にどうも。
なんでこれはもう他人事じゃないんだ。青崎と人形。結論としてどっちが勝っても俺は殺されてしまうんじゃないか。
So, okay. That's true. I mean,
そうね。そこまでやってるなら目撃者は消すでしょうね。私みたいに。
だろう。でも俺はあいつには殺されたくない。
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Like, it's her face, but it's also like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. They don't look right, which is kind of messed up. But it's all puppety. His words were decisive. Decisive. Yeah. As Ako looked at him, she could swear he was trying to encourage her. It was then that she realized Sojiro was looking even worse than before. Oh, how's he? Is he good?
大丈夫なのあなた。
I mean, first, well, let's see. He was running away from you, blasting at him. Then he was carrying you, running away from death nearly. Didn't he jump down a flight of stairs at the entrance or something? And he's back here, I'm assuming? Like,
まあ醤油を一升瓶飲むよりはマシではないかと。
on top of that, bro got school and work, like, the next day. Like, he tried to make light of the situation, but his forehead was clearly drenched in sweat.
そうか。さっき人形に近づいたから。
How could he possibly be able to withstand a curse that made even Alko nauseous? That's true. Also that. She bit her lip, annoyed at herself for not noticing this earlier. Sojiro was such an airhead that she hadn't even paused to consider his plight.
下で隠れていようとか思わなかったの？その方がどう考えても安全でしょ？
She really could not understand him at all.
それは青崎が言うセリフじゃないな。でもまあ長話をしている時間もない。そろそろ追
That's
いつい
true.
てくる
Y'all
頃
over here
だ。
just talking. He turned to look down the corridor. The crackling sounds of a music box could be heard creeping forth from the darkness.
さっき1階にいて考えたんだ。君がやられても俺は殺される。ならまず奴をどうにかするべきだ。
あなた、何が言いたいの？
Yeah, what are you getting at, Sojiro? She asked a question which she already knew the answer. She did it to put him to the test. If he wavered even a little, she would have killed him where he stood.
提案。あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら、俺のことは見逃してくれる？
She said, "Yeah, for tonight."
助けられたぐらいじゃ信念は曲げないって言ったでしょ。それに あなたに何ができるっていうの？
それは青崎が考えてくれ。得意だろ、そういうの。
The commander who had the overall picture was responsible for delegating roles to their teammates. It was futile to depend on someone who was unable to grasp the situation or evaluate the enemy's strength. Sojiro was proud to share that he knew this. He spoke the truth. Ako was the only one who knew both Sojiro and the automata. That's why he pointed out that following her orders is the best of his ability was the only thing he could do. It may have seemed as though Sojiro had surrendered his capacity for self-thought, but in fact, in accepting that he was helpless, he was in fact giving Ako his complete trust.
じゃあ、私の指示に 100% 従うってこと？
What, you're going to use him as a decoy, most likely?
あ、それにこれは恩とか義理の話じゃない。一人だと分が悪いから二人でかかるだけだ。善意でも好意でもない。
Teamwork.
取引って言わないか、こういうの。
His eyes sparkled, as if this was bartering in its truest form.
まったく。
This child must have learned that from Tobimaru, Ako thought. Though she refused to let him see it, underneath she cracked a smile. Sure, he had gotten the best of her just now, but there were times when defeat was not the only outcome in this world.
労働と報酬ってわけね。それなら理にかなってる。うん。言いたくないけど。
She relaxed her shoulders and sighed. Her face cracked into a wicked smile, as if her fears had suddenly washed away.
それ、結構私の好みよ。
Ako repaid Sojiro's trust in equal measure.
結構きつい
Plan
か
of
も。
attack.
あなたの役目。
Ako warned Sojiro, moving as fast as she could without her footfalls, causing a din of noise. Sojiro remained near the center of the spiral maze on the second floor.
実を言うと、もう一つ用意しておいた仕掛けがあるの。
Okay.
自分でもやりすぎだって呆れたもんだけど、あなたがここに来るのが遅かったから。ちょっと興に乗っちゃって。
仕掛けって俺用の？
Yeah, to kill you. Sojiro tilted his head like a squirrel as Ako freely discussed the final ace up her sleeve.
地下の柱に着火型のちょっとした魔術式を刻んでおいたの。中心の柱に点火することで連鎖的に他の柱に仕掛けた魔術も起動する。ジャミングを食らう前に作ったものだから直接魔力を叩き込めば一気にこういくわ。
Sojiro was a little unsettled by how unclear that last bit was.
青崎、こうじゃわからない。できるだけ明確にどこまで爆破する気だったのか白状してくれ。あと、もしかして俺早まったか？
Too late now, buddy.
いや、単なる保険っていうか、追いかけっこの途中であんたを見失ったらいっそ建物ごと爆破しちゃおうかなって。
It was her policy to be thorough and to the end. After all, she laughed in embarrassment, saying it out loud, though.
いくらなんでも徹底しすぎてる。
She wants to make sure you're dead. Faced with Ako's cruelty, Sojiro forgot about the situation at hand and protested from the bottom of his heart.
何よ、いいじゃない。そのおかげでなんとかなりそうなんだから。
She shot back. Ako dashed down the corridor, mumbling things that probably would have left Sojiro backpacking if he heard them. The strategy was simple. Ako had used the escape route to the right to avoid the puppet while making her way down to the basement. Upon reaching the central pillar, she would infuse the formula she had prepared with magical energy and escape. Once ignited, it would take about a minute for the chain reaction to spread throughout the whole house of mirrors, and another minute for the building to collapse. She would be cutting it a little close, but because she had committed the maze to memory, she was sure she could make it out in time. Ako assumed that the chain reaction caused by the pillar would clear the barrier that the puppet had placed at the entrance. And even if it was strong enough to withstand the blast, it would not be able to stay standing once the foundations buckled. Sojiro's escape was assured as long as the formula in the basement was activated. Okay. Next came the most important part. The automation was at a disadvantage in the obstacle-laden house of mirrors. It was unable to move at full speed. Yep. If it was near the center of the second floor when the building collapsed, it would be caught up and crushed by it. Yeah, I'm glad it's not running. Man, that'd be creepy. So the problem was keeping the puppet on the second floor until Aoko could make it down to the basement.
当てにしたからね、しずきくん。せめて3分ぐらいは引きつけて。
Ideally, he would be able to keep it busy until she could activate the formula. If that failed to work, him luring out the first floor would be the next best thing. She understood perfectly well the danger she was putting Sojiro in, but his lucky streak and running speed were nothing to scoff at.
ただ逃げるだけなら、もしかしてとんでもないことをしてくれるかも。あいつ。
May the force be with you, man. Like, Ako made her way through the hidden passage of the maze, her hopes pinned on Sojiro. Sojiro, you are a vital man to this plan. Meanwhile, well out of earshot, Sojiro was readying himself for another desperate chase. He calmed his beating heart using a method of his own making. What mattered most was that he remained calm. The plan was simple enough, and Ako's orders were succinct and easy to understand.
10メートルぐらいの距離を保って、できるだけゆっくり通路を3、4周すること。横道は鏡のつなぎ目で覚えて。ここなら左回りで6、3、7、2枚目にあるから、そこをぐるぐる回ってれば比較的安全よ。
Uh-huh. It was essentially a looping marathon. As long as Sojiro maintained the distance of the puppet's extended arm, and just enough that she could continue to track him, she should continue chasing them indefinitely. Simple though the task was, Sojiro was putting his life on the line as bait. Yeah, I kind of figured that. He'd be bait. Not necessarily a decoy, but bait. And then there was the final order to run as fast as he could to the exit where the building began to sway.
結構じゃなくてかなりきついんじゃないかなこれは。
This is a challenge. He nervously struck his head out from around the corner. He could hear the sound of the music box from the other side of the corridor. First he had to make eye contact with it, then head through the shortcut on the right, and begin their game of tag. He spotted it and braced himself. Closer and closer, fearing that her arm could fly at him at any moment. He went over Ako's instructions in his head.
What?
Oh, don't tell me you forgot. However, he could not quite remember which pain led to the first hidden path. Oh my gosh, man. I mean, I read those instructions too, man, and I kind of forgot them. I was struggling. I was trying to remember it too. I know, that's why I said she like 3rd, 6th, 9th, like... Good luck to you, man. No. He was sure that was mistaken. He was confident he had memorized it moments ago, but his nerves had gotten the best of him, and his head was now spinning. Then, Sojiro realized that the sound of the pursuit was beginning to grow distant, and at an incredible speed. My gosh!
Nani?
The unusual silhouette of the puppet astonished him. Before it had taken the form of a beautiful girl, but now it made a bizarre transformation and returned to the first floor to pursue her primary target.
いや、それは。
Sojiro was no longer sure what to do. with not even the time to mourn his failure as the puppet. With not even the time to mourn his failure, the puppet had vanished out of sight. I'll be of help. Just let me go. Or so he had said, but now he could not follow through.
さて、自分はこれからどうしよう。
Just get out of the building, man. Alone, he tilted his head in frustration. He spoke into the darkness as if Alco would be there to answer him. He's like, yeah, I'm ready to take you on. And this just runs away. He said, no, I'm not after you, bro. Oh, man, that's funny. That very moment, having arrived on the first floor, Alco quickly understood what had transpired above her. She did not even have to strain her ears to hear the puppet. Even during its heyday, this attraction had never made sounds like the one she heard coming toward her now. It was a sound of despair, as if a horde of monstrous hedgehogs were scraping their way past the mirrors of her in her direction.
ドジ、3分どころか10秒持たないってどういうことよ。
Rather than buying her time, Sojiru had in fact stolen hers. She dreamed of cursing him for failing to fulfill his one job.
複数の足音。ってことは、二足から多脚に切り替えたのね。
And after I was just saying, man, it'd be scary if it was actually running at you. now it is. The echoes made it sound like the footsteps of a dozen feet. Especially, yeah, a dozen feet at that. To Alco, it sounded like a giant six-legged spider tearing its way down the corridor. It was a little wonder that it was so much faster than before. Its perception of its surroundings through echolocation was of particular use in this dark. Compared to sight-dependent humans, this automation was far better equipped to navigate its way through the labyrinth of mirrors. If it could not keep pace earlier, it was because its bipedal mode of movement was not up to the task. But the stability provided by multiple legs gave it speed that far exceeded that of any human. What's the plan? Her thoughts spun out as she tried to come up with a plan B. As she knew for sure that this was the pivotal moment. If she continued standing still, she had seconds left at most. Even in her current state, she knew she could easily neutralize the bounded field blocking the entrance without casting a spell. All she had to do was pour a little of her own energy into it. Alco could sprint with all her might for a little more than 3 minutes. The puppet had far more stamina than she had. Oh, I didn't even do that. She could only come up with 3 options. Stop, don't do that. Okay, whatever. First was to escape through the exit in front of her. Second was to hide itself somewhere within the far complicated first floor. And the third was to run into the basement and be stuck like a rat in a trap.
なんだ、考えるまでもない。
She made her decision with zero hesitation. Moving her stiff legs again with determined strength, the oncoming storm was almost upon her. Her resolve formed. She turned and ran, descending into the darkness. No matter what, a finale should be glorious. Hey! This would be the Mirror Castle's final scene. 2 humans and a puppet. A young sorceress ran toward the subterranean heart of the castle, while an it's like I have to cough, but it's not coming out. While an autonomous antique chased its prey into the depths of a demonic dungeon. It's that slight tickle in the throat. I hate it. A minute later, a faint blue charge would ripple through the castle. Hey, this was the main pillar in the deepest depths of the basement. The pillar itself was not there to support the castle structure, but it was nice. Okay, excuse me. But it would serve nicely as a symbol to which the girl thrust her fist with all her magical energy. Okay, Alco. This was the blow that would bring down the castle. She imagined the scene as she threw the punch, a scene that would soon become reality. It was simple ignition, magecraft, meant to release the condensed magical energy engraved into the 4 pillars that formed the foundation of the structure. Using electricity as a switch meant virtually instantaneous activation. It's like, oh. Yeah, Sojo, you need to get out of here. Swift and elegant. A hammer of destruction descended upon the castle of dreams that had stubbornly resisted its fate for 2 years. It was almost a joyous sound. And so the lifeless and abandoned castle mirror set the stage for its final and most spectacular performance. Alpha's magical energy became an electrical charge that activated the magecraft formula engraved into the pillar. The chain reactor would lead to the castle's destruction.
ご苦労様。でも、思ってたよりくたびれてたのね。これじゃあ1分持つかどうか。
The plaza in the center of the basement. Ako tried to steady her breathing while rotating her magical crest at full speed. She wreathed her arms in blue light, fully aware that she could no longer activate another formula. Ugh. Her labored breathing refused to settle. She stood at the center of the basement. Without being spotted even once, she had managed to make it all the way to the center pillar. It was a 100-meter dash in 30 seconds flat, undoubtedly a new personal best. She spurred on her weakened heart, knowing full well that the fate that awaited her. At the fate, yeah.
入れば追ってくる。地下に行けば逃げられない。当然よね。最後まで逃げ回ろうなんて虫のいい話だった。
Hindsight was 2020. The castle was only a minute away from collapsing completely. If they stayed here, they would both be crushed by the rubble. The puppet certainly did not care. With no life of its own, its sole concern was the elimination of its target, Aoko Aozaki. Indeed. The enemy had been willing to die from the start. She resented her own lack of resolve. It wasn't like her to tuck tail and run from an opponent that didn't fear death. Oh, heck no, man. Tell them.
そもそも自爆覚悟じゃないあれ。
Yeah, wait, what? I wasn't even reading it. I was just listening. I slumber, I live, and there I rot. Today's the day I died. Huh, okay.
六足歩行とフィンの一撃は使いすぎよ。もう呪詛による魔力補給じゃ間に合わない。
Such a perpetual motion device was only as good as its ability to regulate its energy consumption. Yeah. Using so many functions at once meant it was burning through fuel quickly and losing the ability to process the curses that powered it. It was using up all of the functions it had been given to achieve its aim. This was the pride of a stool. If such things could have ego, those endowed with sentience could never hope to understand. A beast burned to do nothing but run would bury any human who faced its resolve.
ほんと、もったいない。こういう無茶をするのは姉貴だけかと思ってたけど、いるところにはいるもんね。
Well, but Ako did not intend to sacrifice play here. She respected her adversary now, and she was done regretting her choices. There was no time to waste.
行くわよ。ここできっかり。
Let's end this. Oh! Ako had every intention of paying it back double for what it had done to her. The energy Ako had accumulated exploded out of her right leg. She aimed for a single thing, a head-on attack. The enemy's response was a curse to crush her heart. A curse that would rend Ako's heart and destroy itself in the process. Ooh, okay. As soon as she saw it, Ako kicked the floor as hard as she could. Her long hair swirled through the air as she flipped aside. This lateral move almost sent her tumbling to the ground, but a quick swing of her arm allowed her to regain her balance. Ooh, this music right now. A shot grazed her arm. With the curse scorching her left arm shoulder, she did not flinch. Akko knew she could not hold on as long as she continued to avoid a direct fin shot. Okay, man.
Snap.
Okay. Off balance and in pain, it took her half a second to recover. The moment she raised her head, she deflected the attack with a fist full of magical energy. If the puppet had a will of its own, its eyes could have popped right out of its sockets. It would have been floored. Shocked at the song. Shocked at the song. I was reading the comment at the same time. This is a nice track. I'm liking this. But yeah, shocked at the strong will. I'm shocked at the song too, but shocked at the strong will that allowed this girl to perform a series of moves like this. Akko's response was instantaneous. While her power was not sufficient to completely redirect the arm's trajectory, it was just enough to deflect it harmlessly past her hairs. Maduvat. The chant became a curse that robbed Akko of her vitality. Did it have something left in the tank, or was it actually indignant? Whatever the reason, Akko was easily able to resist its weakened defensive maneuver. Not manure, that's nasty. Ooh, okay. Okay, Akko. And her right leg, pulsing with magical energy, shot up into the puppet's chest from below. Ooh. It was much lighter than Akko anticipated. Rather, she felt little resistance. An automation's weight was determined by its internals, the size of its power source. Ironically, it was the superiority of its music box engine that would prove to be its downfall.
Venite, venite, venite. Meum sepulchrum, venite.
Ugh. A stuttering curse. Having taken the full brunt of Akko's kick, the puppet bounced from ceiling to floor, collapsing in a heap. Its internal construction had been warped by the impact, leaving the drama of the music box that powered the puppet warped as well. Yeah, the building, yo, Akko, the building. Don't forget. Part of the ceiling came crashing down in front of Akko, snapping her back to her senses. Huh? She was so stunned by her own victory that she forgot the House of Mirrors had begun to collapse. Oh, yeah. There was no time to relish in her victory or pity her opponent. Not unless she wanted to meet the same fate. As the situation stood, she found it hard to imagine getting out alive. She slapped herself on the cheek and took off. This is her bounty for finishing their battle in a matter of seconds. With her breathing labored by all the excitement, she ran for the exit. The collapse was intensifying by the second. Having lost its support pillars, the castle was buckling under its own weight. Blast and exit. Escaping from the basement was proving to be no easy task. While she was taking the shortest route possible through the maze, she was nearly crushed by a falling piece of the ceiling along the way. This was the second time. No, third time she had to deal with fallen rubble along the way. She destroyed the debris on the stairs with magical bullets as she ran. The automation's jamming had long since worn off, and the earlier attack had damaged the vast majority of its functions. Yup. Her breathing was heavy as she ran. The intensity surrounding her sparked her brain into overdrive. The ceiling seemed to be collapsing in slow motion. For her, a second felt like 5. Her frayed nerves made it hard to read time correctly, as her life seemed to flash before her very eyes, a light at the very end of the tunnel. There was debris riddled throughout the stairway, forcing her to crawl up it. She emerged from the destroyed basement to the collapsing first floor. That the plaza was still traversable at all was a miracle in itself. Unfortunately for her, and fortunately for her, the crucial path to this exit was still intact. The corridor to the entrance was still intact. The basement maze only extended as far as the plaza, so the entrance corridor wouldn't collapse. Only the ceiling would cave in, leaving the scaffold and surround intact. She got herself this far by telling herself repeatedly that fate would decide whether or not she had reached the plaza. Her gamble paid off. It was her lucky day. All she had to do was muster the lack of her strength and keep moving forward until... She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Was it naivety or a sense of responsibility? She pushed aside the image that popped into her head and continued running down the corridor. That was 5 minutes ago. At the time, Sojiro had nodded with trepidation, and Alko had not bothered to ask herself why. She's worried about him. This corridor was giving out too. If she were to look back, she was sure it would see the building collapse in on her. She was also sure she had no time to waste doing so. Her luck was fading as fast as building structural integrity. It was a small miracle that she had escaped serious injury up to this point, and she could not afford even the slightest slip-up. An ankle sprain, loss of balance, even a sneeze would be fatal. A simple pat on the back was enough to end it. So naturally... Oh, yup, they're not done. There was clear as day. From the detritus of the stairway, death had arisen and take her down with it. A corpse that had crawled its way up from the depths of hell itself. It was still operational. It was still armed with curses. It had crawled after her, watching as Alko desperately tried to save herself. Huh. Yeah, for real. The puppet's arm shot forward. While Alko did not turn to meet it, she could see its reflection in the mirrors. Extend, extend, extend. This time she could not dodge it. There's absolutely nothing she could do. The puppet with her face saying, Bloody death. Huh. Death be upon you. For a moment she could not believe her eyes. This was the last thing she expected to see. Ooh, okay. This dude Sojiro, man, coming in clutch with that. A fierce expression adorned the face of the boy who had been waiting in the plaza as he smashed the puppet's outstretched arms. Anger really did not suit him at all. His weapon of choice was a fire extinguisher. He must have searched the maze for something to use as a weapon. No, never mind that. It was too crazy to contemplate, but he had stayed behind. For her? She stopped the feet, she had sworn to herself she would never stop moving, extended her hand out to him.
そんなのほっといていいから早く
Sojiro tossed the fire extinguisher aside and took off running. Sojiro running, man. Man. Pieces of ceiling continued to collapse like dominoes. They kept moving with dust and dirt following their wake. Their shadows raced through the collapsing corridor with all their strength. The castle was in the throes of death. With a massive crash and cloud of dust, the final chapter of the fairy tale had been Kissy Land came to an abrupt end. Ooh! Now, was that enough to kill it? Ooh, I'm skeptical. The duel to this death was over. For a moment, amidst their swirling emotions, all past enmity was left behind, and the two collapsed on the lawn and bashed in a strange solidarity. The ringing of their ears subdued before long. A trauma of such magnitude seemed impossible for an amusement park like this. As the sounds of destruction echoed across the park, Alko addressed the individual at her side.
生きてる
She's like, dang it. Well, the clip for her tongue was adorable. The meaning behind it was anything but.
青崎、あいつどうなった？
見ての通りよ今頃バラバラ死体になってるんじゃない
Hopefully. Sojiro sighed, not wholly relieved by her frank response. His reason?
でもそんな心配より自分の心配をした方がいいと思うわよ
Yeah.
しずきくん
yeah, Sojiro, man. You both survived, but... well, at least for now. He wasn't out of the woods yet, after all.
青崎、子供の頃はいじめっ子だっただろう。
可逆趣味はないって自負してるけど
Okay.
それで
What?
今の自分の立場分かってる
As she says with a smile. She sat up and smiled. Sojiro hung his head in shame, wondering why her kind tone and expression were so chilling.
面目次第もございません。
かしこまってもダメよあの提案には大前提があったわよねこれは取引だって
わかってる。だから面目ないって言ってるだろ。
Sojiro made a show of avoiding her eyes, like a pouting child. Aqua was taken aback by this sulky display. Perhaps he was angry at himself rather than her. He was not mad because she would not let him go. He was mad that he had not done his part. Aqua sighed for what seemed to be the millionth time that day. She could not figure out what surprised her more, his unconditional kindness or her naive approval of it.
じゃあ覚悟はできてるの
そんなのはできないけど、約束だからな。
It was certainly the case that he failed to do any of the things she had expected of him. But just then she glanced back at the collapsed house of mirrors. What had he done after failing so spectacularly? He had searched for the extinguisher so that he could use as a weapon, and he saved you right there with that clutch move, so... I mean... give him a break for the night? Oh, man. And waited patiently in the plaza for the maids around him, because... Yeah. It was a foolish choice, and the exact opposite of her choice to run toward the exit without hesitation.
まそれでよしとするか
She was satisfied, even as she was shocked at how naive she was being. If it was true that he had saved her, she smiled inwardly, admiring, if only for a moment, the bravery he continued to show in her face of such extreme circumstances.
役割は果たさなかったけどアフターケアは合格だし約束は守らなくちゃね
Okay, that's nice. With a nod, she pulled herself to her feet.
約束は、いつか守ってもらうとして。
Huh. The girl tried to keep a straight face as she offered a hand to the boy still lying on the
結
ground.
果はどうあれ手助けしてもらったし特別サービスってことで今夜はもう手を出さないであげる
Got left out the hey, there we go. Hey, I'll take that as something at least. Sojiro, come on, man. This was like, yeah, awesome, or thanks or something. Like, she bashfully averted her gaze. Though her profile appeared different than it had in the past, it is clearly still the face of the vibrant girl he met that day he first arrived in town.
何
As if she had felt his eyes on her, she shot him with a frowning glare.
いや突拍子もないけど青崎は律儀だなって
He took her outstretched hand. Feeling his weight as she pulled him up, she could not help but think that he was about the last person she wanted to hear that from.
ところで今夜はって言うけど明日からは
Bro, you're about to get another letter tomorrow saying another location.
さまその時になったら考えるわ
She shrugged her shoulders as if she was not sure herself. The response was so unlike her that it made Sojiro smile. Was it the solitary of having escaped death together, or their fleeting camaraderie that made him do so? It might have been for this night only, but the air between them was kind and gentle. A lot had transpired, but the midwinter nightmare had come to an end. The pair had overcome many trials and tribulations, and could now leave their mirror realm in their wake. But before that,
随分と身勝手ね
Al was about to pop, but she's like, hold up.
それはあなた一人で決めていいことだったかしら青子
Ew. Oh no. It was the voice of a beautiful singing bird and a merciless machine all rolled into
Alice.
one. Her voice quivered as she spoke the name. Ooh, Alice popping up like a menace right now. The lady in black made her presence known. The night was not over yet. Her name was Alice Kunji. She was a witch whose name struck fear into the heart of Alko, an avatar of the night who would allow no witnesses. Oh, she said no witnesses. Whoa! Man! That was a solid section right there. That time. Now for the actual boss. Where's boss music at? Save right here. Save right. It was they survived the whole thing with that puppet, the whole bomb thing, the whole thing about the grabbed it, and Sojiro coming in clutch, only for why do I have so many pages to save? I was noticing that, and then Alice comes in for the final boss. That is actually funny. Hold on, what's an archive right here? Okay, so I like how they show these in like books. I know, it looks cool. Incident of the Dark, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to do part 2 another day because, that's I've been streaming for, how long has it been? 2.5 hours? I'll do part 2 next time I stream, everyone. I can't stream for another hour. I'm going to be wiped. I save 10 times. But this was solid. I like this section. This is a nice little section. Things are heating up right now. Al is popping up in it because I was wondering about that. Because I was like, I have a feeling she's going to let him go. I mean, a few parts of that section that I felt were kind of predictable for me, at least. Especially toward the ending with her sparing Sojiro. I was like, she's probably going to spare Sojiro, but how's Alice going to think about this? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Alice is watching this all go down. So, yeah, next time we'll do part 2 of chapter 5, this long chapter. As I'm burning up here. What's the weather right now? What's the temperature? It's 38 degrees outside. Who has the heat on blast in the house? So I'm putting the heat on higher than where it needs to be. But anyways, thank you for tuning in for this again. I'll be back on Thursday for part 2 of chapter 5. Because I got work the next 2 days. Yay. It's gonna be really intense. Ooh, that gets me excited. Then now I want to be fully awake, energetic for that. Then. Oh, is an ad right now? Okay, the ad's back. It's weird how ads just pop up like that. But yeah, then I want to be fully awake and energetic for that. Then, because I'm about to be like tired in the next half an hour. So, and I'm also a little hungry too. I was thinking about that earlier. There's something else I wanted to say. Yeah. I was thinking, like, as this whole scene was going down, I was also thinking about, like, since Witches on the Holy Night is getting, like, an anime movie adaptation, if I'm not mistaken. I'm curious how, like, a lot of the scenes is going to go down. Like, I'm like, as that whole action's going down, I'm like, dang, this would be cool seeing this animated. It looks cool right here, too, but I'm also thinking, like future, too, how that might look. Which would be that'd be interesting. Whenever that comes out, I wonder if it's going to be in, like, multiple parts, because, I don't know. I mean, I'm only in chapter 5. I don't know how many chapters the whole story is, but, or I guess it also depends on how long they make the movie. I mean, how long was the Heaven Feels movies? How long were those movies? I think each one was, like, how long was each movie of Heaven Feels? Like 2 hours? Like 2.5 hours for each one? Something? Why can't I see, like, a length on the movie anywhere? An hour and 20 minutes. So, yeah, 2 hours. So, yeah, each one was, like, 2 hours, so. Huh. But, yeah, anyways, I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next episode, regardless. Or at least next part 2 of Chapter 5, so. Yeah, anyways, thank you for tuning in. I have some other stuff on the channel. Today's Monday, so yeah, tomorrow I might have my Fate Grand Order part, starting the 3rd Singularity. I might have that up tomorrow. I need to finish editing it tonight. I'll probably have it up tomorrow, though. I'll probably have that up tomorrow, amongst other things on the channel. So, yeah. Again, let me end this. Otherwise, I'm gonna be talking and lose my voice eventually. I kind of feel that too. Like, I don't know, when it comes to, like, some works, I do get comfortable with, like, its original medium, or at least the first way I see it, and I don't want, like, now that I see this now. Yeah, that's the thing. That's where I read up. I found out the Heaven's Fields movie cut out a bunch of stuff. I was just like, dang it. I was reading up on stuff. I was like, dang, that's some cool stuff that they cut out. But, I mean, they're great movies. But I was like, if they added up some other stuff, that'd be, like, more interesting. But then again, I think about some of the Heaven's Fields movies. When I checked them out, I did say that there's some things I felt like, I don't know. Like, I felt like some additional things would have made it more of a satisfying viewing experience for me. Like, in a way, I don't know. I spent it better in my video. I need to upload those. I never uploaded my reactions to the Heaven Fields movies. I still haven't done that. I'll probably have that up before. I gotta do that before the end of the year. Anyways, I'm gonna stop talking, but I'm about to lose my voice soon, actually. That's why I'm drinking water. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. Have yourselves a nice night. I'm loving this story so much. But yeah, what closer theme should I go with today? I'm feeling a bit of that Melting Blood, so